Okay, I am so excited to have Christina Trifero on. Christina, welcome.
Yeah, hello.
It's been so exciting getting to know you, getting to work with you. We have a common friend group and common networking group. It's been so exciting to have you on. And I figure we can start out with a question I cannot understand, even though I have asked you this in person. How in God's green earth do you go from Silicon Valley to Serenbe, Georgia? Tell me about your background, Christina.
I would be happy to. First, I just want to say, I'm so grateful to be here, and you're such a light, and I've learned so much from you and all that you do, and all the people that have come in through your world, both in your podcast and in the real world. So, thank you. I'm really excited and
Oh,
grateful to be
shucks.
here too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, so my whole life, I think looking back, of course, it's easy to do a scan of the records of your life, like looking back and seeing how this all unfolded. But I've always followed my gut and my intuition, and I am not afraid to sort of blow it all up and start fresh based on what I'm being guided to do. And I was living in New York City and I just got the call to be in California, and I was so entrepreneurial. I wanted the chaos. I wanted to be able to
Hold up. What
fail.
do you mean got the call? Like a spiritual call or an
Yeah,
actual
yeah,
call?
spiritual call. That's a really good point. Most of my calls are spiritual first, and then and then I'm getting the real call of you got the job or the apartment's yours or whatever it is. Yeah, I felt like it was time for me. I had a really aha moment when I was sweating in Central Park in the middle of the summer, and the beach was just so far away to get to, and I was like, this isn't on paper, everything's really successful, but um this isn't what my spirit really wants. Off to California I went with no job, no plan, and it all just started unfolding in the most glorious, magnificent way. And then similarly, after, a long, successful career there, I got the call to leave.
But you're in technology, yes? So
Yeah, I was
similar
in
to me.
tech. Yep. I was on the marketing business development side. So I was helping grow very small startups to IPO. I did that about 4 times, which is pretty exciting. So I feel like I got a business degree and, made some really close relationships when you're building something together. So intense. And yeah, that's what I was doing in tech.
How like Serenbe, so just for people who don't know, so the founder of Serenbe, Steve Nygren, has been on my show. Serenbe is this amazing biophilic space, this community outside of Atlanta, Georgia,
Yeah.
that is this kind of like upscale farming community
Mhm.
that is focused on wellness. Like, how in God's green earth do you go from San Francisco,
Mhm.
Silicon Valley,
Mhm.
to finding, I almost think of like spinning around a globe and just putting your finger on somewhere. Like, how does this channel through you to
Yeah.
move, even as a single woman? Like, it's a
Mhm.
family kind
Mhm.
of
Oh, it sure is.
community.
Yeah.
This is some ballsy shit, Christina.
Thank you. It feels that way. And when I get an intuitive hit, it can be really inconvenient and annoying. And I sort of
Right.
start to challenge the universe of like, why would I leave this oceanfront apartment with all of my great friends and so much things I love to go anywhere? And I just kept hearing it and feeling it in my body. It was a very calm knowing. And then when I looked at the logistics, I would panic. And I just kept challenging the universe. If I'm meant to do it, okay, what do I want? I would like to make money to leave. Well, my job at the time decided to do a relocation package where I could move anywhere in the world and they would give me money to leave. What? That doesn't exist in the world. Okay, great, check. And then I was like, how am I going to pack up all my stuff? I don't really want to pick a place. Where do I go? Okay, universe, make this so easy. I just want to sleep in my own bed until the minute that I leave and make this really simple. Okay, that next day, I found a couple who wanted to just take my apartment and take everything in it. So I sold them everything that I owned. And then I didn't choose to live in Serenbe. I traveled the world for a while. I had true freedom and I lost my job. That was meant to be. And I just started this business. And when I really thought about what was next, I was like, I want to live in the trees. I want to live in community. If I'm starting over, I want people to be generous and to be kind and to be welcoming. I want wellness. I want to be able to speak about my lifestyle in a way where people don't look at me like I'm crazy. So my best friend, like a sister, she lives in Atlanta, and she was like, can I show you Serenbe? And I was like, sure. And she's like, I know you're going to move there if you see it. And sure enough, I was like, this is it. And I did the same thing. I challenged the universe. I said, if I am meant to live there, I want to find this place that looks like this, that's this, all these specs, and I want it to be this ridiculously low price. And again, I put in a call and the next day I had it. So it can be that
Wow.
simple. I was just so clear. Yeah.
So I'm thinking about clear channels, and then
Yeah.
I'm thinking about my channels.
Yeah.
Like, how do you tap into your intuition if your nervous system is fried and dysregulated? Because I imagine that people who are listening to this, it may be hard to discern. And
Yeah.
I think about, like my husband and I, we love Asheville, North Carolina. And I
Uh-huh.
literally feel like my body can breathe. I feel like the world, and I've gone there so many times, but there is not one time where it hasn't delivered, right? Like it hasn't made me feel like I am restored and whole. And so I think about like, theoretically, it would make sense for me to move to Asheville, North Carolina, because I feel so good. But practically, there's no way. And I
Yeah.
live in the city and I love the city. And so it's really hard to figure out if you're thinking about a big move, if you're thinking about leaving your job when you have family, when you have, a move or something where you're kind of yearning for something different.
Yeah.
How do you even begin?
So this is like how I do a real intuition check in my own process or I teach. So first of all, you want to look for neutrality. So real intuition often feels like calm, kind of matter of fact. It doesn't feel urgent. It doesn't feel dramatic. And that part of your mental chatter is of like how really doesn't exist in that way. It's sort of like that first knowing of like, I really want this. And then typically smart, sensitive people are like, but that's crazy. Like all the logistics, like why would I follow that dream?
Right.
And next is non attachment. So if you really, again, want something, intuition is not obsessed with getting its way in a very specific way. If it has to happen and it has to happen like XYZ, like these all things, then it's the ego talking. Intuition really is embodied. It's living in your body. It's not just the story. You feel it in your chest, your gut, your skin. It's not in your brain. So what I heard when you just told that story of Asheville and the story I just told about, leaving is I sort of was like, I feel so clear. There is no screaming desire. Intuition whispers. And I was like, this is a quiet knowing and it doesn't make any sense. And then I can say, okay, well, in my truest desire, if this is meant to happen, universe, let's make it easy. And so it sounds like these steps of moving to Asheville, you haven't allowed yourself the exercise of what would feel really good in order to make that happen. Is it you keep your house now and you have a rental there? Is it it's an experiment, a temporary amount of time? Is it that you find a community there first and you're pulled? Like whatever that looks like to Allison, it's going to be a whisper and you're going to almost feel like it's impossible to do, but you have a quiet knowing. But in your head, you're like spinning. That's not intuition.
Yeah. I don't know any other state other than spinning
Yeah.
and obsessing.
Yeah.
How do you like you sound like somebody who has access to time when you can meditate and be clear,
No, no, no.
you know?
Listen, no, it looks different for everybody. And this comes from, first of all, I want to really state, I am not perfect at this. I often spin. The spinning can be part of it. That story I just told you was not I was freaking out and so scared every step of the way. But I really have had such an intimate relationship now with my intuition and it's proven over and over that I can trust it to the point where I can be on a monkey bar and not need to have the next rung in order to let go. But I am a recovering control freak. I had obsessive compulsive thought loops in my head. I had low self-worth. I had fear. I had attachment to needing to have people in order to make big changes or validation. These are all things where you're saying you're at, I was once very much at. And through that process of like, and I will say to you too, you are deeply psychic and intuitive. You have this inner knowing, but then you just skip over it. So I'm really just to challenge the fact that you say like, I have all these thoughts. It's like, actually that comes second to you knowing and having intuition. You wouldn't be where you are today in your life and your love and your career and the way that you express yourself through dance and your fashion and all of your friendships. Like that wouldn't happen if you didn't have this deep knowing. That life wasn't built out of a place of your fear and anxiety. And so, yeah, it's really just a practice. And that's why I teach it. That's why I have people come and work with me for 3 months, because it takes time to be able to exercise that muscle, you know?
Yeah, it really does. And I think what the undercurrent that I'm hearing is trust and support. Trust and support, right? Like, am I
Yeah.
trusted? Am I going to be okay? And when I think about decision making, and you and I have talked about this offline, is the cognitive bias, like discerning when you're faced with questions and faced with a decision, the
Mhm.
cognitive bias that we use towards decision making. How do we discern what is intuition and what is just what we wanna do?
Yeah. Well, they come together as a really fun pair. And I, I want to flag that not everything that glitters is gold. So that the spiritual discernment you're talking about is thinking about what's influencing you to come to your decision. Is this because I want something because I see everybody else around me having it and I'm told culturally that this is like the thing that I need, and then I become house poor? Am I doing this performatively? Do I want to look like I am spiritual? Do I want to have these vibes and have all the things around me, but you're not actually willing to do the ugly parts, the messy parts, the hard, slow parts of
What are the
spiritual?
ugly what give me an example of ugly, slow, hard parts.
Yeah, well, slow, I think, is obvious that it takes time to actually grow to trust your intuition. You don't just say, okay, I trust it now. And I did a few meditations on it. It's challenging the universe. It's challenging the intelligent wisdom of nature, of the divine source, of God, whatever you want to call it. And then proving over and over, like, actually, it's okay. But in the meantime, it looks really messy and it can really take time. It can take a year, it can take more. The messy part is sometimes, and often I see this with women, is they have so much clear intuition about what they want to do, but they're so afraid to make that change because it actually creates such transformation in their life. They don't want it all to fall apart because they don't yet trust that it's going to come back together even better than they thought. An example of that is maybe leaving a marriage, right? Of like someone will come and be like, I know this is the right thing to do. And I've done the therapy and couples counseling, like I can't shake it. But that's messy to know that, right? That can be chaotic to make that a big of a change. Same thing with moving. That's exciting. That's lovely. Messy.
I wonder about you working with people in a state of transition.
Yeah.
It isn't like where people come to you and they're like, everything is perfect. I want it to be more perfect, right? People are kind of going through these big changes. What is it like to help unwind what is programming from society?
Yeah.
I talk about this a lot, and we talk about this a lot on my show and with my listeners. Like most people are over 35, over 40, and usually by the time you hit 40, you go through some shit, right? Like the road behind you isn't like it no longer is paved, like
Yeah.
it might be
Yeah.
breaking up a little bit and you're in a state of reinvention.
Yeah.
You're working with people in a state of reinvention. What are we taught that is false?
Such a juicy question. And I love this idea of reinvention and being in this space with you because it is a really deep, complex topic, but it's actually pretty simple. And I will tell you, the majority of people that I work with are 40 to 78, and they're still looking to reinvent themselves, but from a place of that inner knowing that there's been this quiet voice in them that they've ignored long enough. And they just want to know, am I right? Is this crazy? And a lot of these women are extremely successful, wealthy, established, so smart, sensitive, loving, kind. And they come in because they're done outsourcing your inner authority. So much
Mm.
at that starting point. Yeah, say that again. Stop outsourcing your inner authority. You stop looking outside of you to say, is this what I'm supposed to do? Is this the measure of success? One of my clients that I just talked to said, I was meant to be an opera singer. I could have been. And instead, she went and got her PhD in something completely, completely different. And now she's coming to me saying, I think I want to go back to opera singing and painting and writing a children's book and all of these beautiful things that is like, why do I have to listen? Well, her parents told her that she needed a PhD because her parent was the first one to ever go to college. Like education is important. So these are just examples of like, we're getting so much authority around us telling us what success is. And you just come in and you're like, I'm done. I will say a lot of people don't come in knowing they're going to transform their life. In fact, a lot of them are afraid to do that. And they don't want to work with me because they feel like well, if I know, then it's all going to fall apart. And that's scary.
Mm.
And it is scary. And that is not what I'm here to do. But we are here to know, like, well, what is your intuition? Let's just be curious about it. And that's why my business name is Spiritual Curiosity, because all you need to do is just come in a little curious. I don't care if you're a skeptic. I make the woo really practical. If you're not being practical about what intuition is and what spirituality is and growth and art and creativity and all of that, then again, you're just outsourcing spirituality to someone, a mentor. That's not what I'm about. You really need to strengthen and empower yourself to say, I am my own inner authority. I trust this wisdom. And then the next step could be, well, what are you going to do about it? I invite you to be curious about
It's so interesting because you label yourself a psychic medium, an
that.
energy healer,
Mhm.
and a spiritual strategist.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this.
So these are sort of layers of what I bring into this. Psychic medium, if you're not familiar, psychic is I have all the psychic abilities to be able to look into your past, look at your future self, just see things, secrets that you might not have told anyone, just sort of these things that's not tangible. Like, how does she know that? Everybody is psychic. I will say that's another topic for another time, but these gifts are really strong and they have been for a long time. Mediumship is spooky. I don't understand it. I can't wait for science, like the telepathy tapes, to explain this stuff. But
Yeah.
um, I can speak to people who have passed on the other side. That doesn't always mean ancestors. It could be angel babies that have never been born. It could be the spirits on the land that you've moved to, animals, all sorts of things. So I am a channel of communication between spirit guides that are working for your highest good with your highest self to sort of nudge and give you information. With ancestors, usually they come through to be like, hey, here's an answer about something that you wanted clarity on, or here's a pattern that's been ancestral that you inherited that actually has nothing to do with your actual fears. Okay. Energy healer. I can feel in your body what you're feeling. I can feel actual physical sensations. I can trace them back to a specific time in your life that started. With spirit world, I can feel sensations in their body. Maybe it's like showing me how they died. If their lungs hurt, I can see, okay, they died of lung cancer, stomach, things like that. But the energy, I don't even want to call it energy healing, even though that's accessible for people. It's restoration. We are born with perfect bodies that know how to heal. We are just releasing places in our body where energy is stuck and holding us back. We are releasing slowly and gently emotions that you're holding and feel unsafe to express. And with the release of that, lightness comes and freedom comes, and you feel safe in your own body again. And then your intuition gets stronger. So that's that.
Strategist.
The spiritual strategist part of it, and I've renamed this so many times, intuition coach, there's just so many ways to go about it. But basically what it is you come in and you work with me so that we can go through a journey together to really empower you to go through the realities of your life, specific challenges and feelings and relationships and health, and go in deep into it and be guided by this, exactly like you're asking. How do I do it? I'm not going to accomplish that in one session. I can, razzle dazzle and excite you, but it might open the door, but the real work comes over time. And so I really love doing that as well. And I do workshops with people. That's more of like a teaching kind of container.
What I'm so appreciative about you, Christina, is that you are so focused on you not being the healer.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You are so focused on empowering others. And so I have become really skeptical I love learning about cults. And I also find it's so easy for us to look for a prophet, to look for somebody that sees what we can't see.
Yeah.
And that is why we look up to people, maybe they're false prophets.
Hmm.
And I've even done an episode on false prophets, but I think it's interesting to see how many people kind of capitalize on what that could look like. And it's very seductive. Like even for, it's very seductive for me of personally, I feel like I'm not somebody that easily gets the message. And
Yeah.
so I love working with people like you to just give me an assist, help me.
Love
Like, I
that.
feel like it's right here. And I feel like a lot of us feel that way where we feel like we've got all the pieces, but it's not quite put in order yet. It's not quite making sense. It feels like it's right here in your blind spot. You just
Yeah.
can't figure out how to access it. And so I appreciate the positioning that you have of like helping you access
Mhm.
what that could look like and kind of strengthening your intuition. And what I understand about you is that you work with a lot of executives, a lot of people that are making large business decisions and figuring out how to apply intuition, not as like a manifestation or kind of a party trick, but
Yeah.
as a leadership skill. Help me understand that.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to listen to this part of this over and over. I'm so full of joy that you deeply understand that, and your way with words and being able to explain that to your audience is such a gift. So thank you for that reflection. You're right. I work with, intuition as a leadership skill. The practicality, I help you build a bridge to what is all of this and how do I use it in my life? How do I improve my career, my relationships, my health? Like, how do I walk away being like, I got this? Selfishly, also, that bubbles out and ripples out in people feeling empowered in their own intuition to all the people around them. So I think about all the people that by empowering one person, I can touch and help without ever them knowing about me or needing to know about me. I certainly don't want credit. It really ripples out in that way. And, I work with actors and psychologists and all these different retired people and finance, it's all over the place. And it's just one thread of teaching this work. And again, it takes time. If anybody out there, and there are so many spiritual influencers that just make my skin crawl and anger me sometimes.
Preach, queen.
Yeah, they are. They are. It's like this performative way of being quote unquote spiritual. And they are preying on vulnerable people. They are taking their money and telling them, oh, you'll make this back tenfold. We don't know what that looks like,
How can you tell the difference though?
It's hard. I've been wrong before, but usually it shows up like where it's like, yeah, this is it. And it's very strange. Like there's been a couple of communities that I've been a part of, or like people who are influencers and really well known, where I'm like looking around me and I'm like, how is everyone buying into this bullshit? Like I feel so icky around this person, and they're saying all of the right words, but there is no heart and no embodiment and they have an agenda. They have an agenda that's about them and their validation. And everybody, like I said, is psychic. So you have an intuition on people, but you can be so desperately wanting to be fixed and outsourcing that
Mhm.
to someone else that you'll do anything. And you see all of these people around them like quote unquote healing, but it's not rooted in any real truth and patience and so many things. So yeah, I can spot it a mile away now.
Well, Christina, I'm disappointed in a couple of things that I've noticed lately. Like there have been some rooms that I've been invited into of people that I have seen, and I get around the people that they are around and I'm like, none of this feels right, even
Yeah.
though they're perfectly kind and
Yeah.
wonderful people, but there's something off. And I feel disappointed that it feels like there's more and more groups like that,
Yeah.
where I'll be in a room and I'm like, this is not it. Where, like I'm in a position where I'm like, I want to invest money. I want to invest, money into communities or things that make sense, but I'm finding it's less and less rooted. And it just doesn't feel aligned. And that's okay. That's great,
Yeah.
but it feels really disappointing to know that there are people that are seeking support. And I'm careful. And on this show, we don't talk about being fixed because people that
No.
come here don't need to be fixed.
You're already
They're
perfect and
told they're
fixed and healed.
broken.
Yeah. No.
Like the world tells us that we're
Yeah.
broken, and let me spoon feed you the medicine
Yeah.
that I happen to have in my high ticket coaching offer in this retreat. And there are some that are legit. There are some that are
Yeah.
just aligned. It just feels fewer and far between. And so the spiritual aesthetics, I think is what you call it.
Yeah.
I just want to understand. Like I'm disappointed, Christina.
I really want to reflect this back to you because you are speaking from a very intuitive place. Do you feel that where you're like, I'm going to rooms and I just know, but
I
everything, it's
know it's
almost
not
like
the
you're
right
looking.
thing. I'm grateful for that. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I also feel so skeptical that I don't like, I have to like pull back on all the cult content that I love to I love to just swim in learning about cults, but if I do it too much, then I become skeptical of everything that
Yeah.
nobody's gonna get me got, you know? And I also don't want to be in that space. I want to leave room for magic. And I think, Christina, even though the manifestation part, like manifestation, magic, all of these things are kind of buzzwords.
Mhm.
I want it to be true. I want it to be true. I want miracles to exist.
Well, I just gave you an example of my own life of how miracles do exist. What do you mean I got paid to move? That's crazy. Like, I didn't know anyone that that was a possibility. Here's the difference: you get to have desires and wants and build a life that you feel. When it comes from an intuitive place, you kind of like have the wish in your heart. You really embody what it would be like to already have those things and feel it in your energetic system of how yummy and good that feels. The next step, though, is letting it go, really not grasping and holding on. And if this doesn't happen, everything's going to fall apart. It's letting it go and truly surrendering to the universe to saying, if not this, then better. I give it to you. Otherwise, you're creating a dam in the river instead of floating through the river. So have your wishes, have your desires, call it manifestation if you want. But if someone is packaging, if you want this and it looks specifically this way, these are the ways to hack your brain to get it. You know, and God is only ever working as like your personal executive assistant to give you exactly what you lay out. Well, guess what? The universe is so much more creative than Christina or Allison could ever be. I have no idea what's out there and possible. I have limiting beliefs. I have low self worth at times. I don't know that I deserve the dream, you know? So if I really let go and just say, I'm with those feelings, I feel that way, but I trust there's something else at play here, I can go into the river and flow. And so you really have to be discerning of saying, if someone is pitching you a promise that is rooted in your ego self, that you know, the control and playing to your fear and vulnerability, big no, big red flag. Because it's going to look, like I said, sometimes slow, messy, scary. But on the other side of that, I can say without a doubt, and why I do this work, miracles on miracles on miracles. It is the most freeing feeling to be able to go into surrender and trust this thing outside of my own ego, and parts of me that are afraid.
I think that the 2 words, again, that keep coming up that have me shudder,
Hmm.
or 3 things, is surrender,
Yeah.
trust.
Yeah.
What was
Yeah.
the other one? Oh, not being attached to outcomes.
Yeah. I know. Well, you,
So how
again,
do
you
I
get to have
begin?
outcome. We're going to write goals down. You're going to say, okay, like I have these
Okay.
goals. I'd like to leave my job at this date, around this date. You know,
Yes.
I'd like to, like all these things. Great. And then we go, let's put that aside. Let's go into the feelings then. And you just nailed it. Well, what are the roadblocks to that? Right. And control, trust, fear. Well, I go back in time and I go, where did this start? How do we just release that in your energetic system? Work on with your highest self. I can promise you, Allison, your true soul essence does not feel control. It completely trusts. It has a relationship with that divine source or universal intelligent wisdom, whatever you want to call it. And so it's really quieting and loving and appreciating all those other parts of you that come in, but getting to the whispers of your highest self and truest intuition. That's why, like, for a whole month we work on just that. Okay. Like, that's at least 4 sessions, right? What are these things at play? Why are they in your way? Let's love them. Let's hold them. Okay, great. So now that they feel safe, what is your highest self saying? Whoa, now I have this whole other voice in charge, or that I'm with, right? Wow, okay, I'm starting to trust that, right? And it's practice over and over. And then it's like surrender. That is the third level. That is like the third month that we work in. It's like, ooh, it gets scary. You really start to grip. I can't really let go. But then again, things start to unfold. That happens. That's beautiful beyond your wildest dreams. I just had a client that I can't tell you, she did every spiritual thing, healer, program, all the, you know, big names. Like, she would go to her pendulum to be like, is it yes or is it no? I need to know. Like, I need to know this thing. And she moved into an apartment and right away it was a no for her to like not live there. And I knew it was a no. And, you know, she knew it was a no. She just moved. And how are you going to move out when you just did all of those things? And a year ago, when she started working with me, it would not have been possible for her to trust her intuition and see all the faith and see all the yeah, all of that. But she did. She had the trust and strength. And she went, okay, I surrender. I know what my intuition is saying. Within 3 weeks, she was in a dream apartment and out of that situation. And it was moldy. It was going to hurt her health. And she could have stayed, you know? But again, Now what do you have? Trust. You went, well, I can look back and go, that's okay. Just at the end of last conversation, she's trying to untangle a cord with her ex-husband. Energetically, we see that it's holding her back from her new relationship. Well, who's going to water my plants while I'm gone? I can't, this is the person to do it, that he always waters my plants. I said, that sounds like a limiting belief. Do we trust that someone will come? I just got a message before this. You won't believe it. I found someone new to water my plants who just offered. She let go. She surrendered to that's not true. You can find someone else to water your plants, How do we believe that? So
I think the other undertone here is that these processes take time. Especially our American society,
mhm.
we want hacking, we want it done
Yeah.
now. And I think the resistance of that push pull of I need it done now, I'm in control, I need it handled, versus what happens if we took our hands off and trusted and surrendered. But it is scary as fuck.
Look at
It
you're
really is.
teaching this. You're doing it right now. This is real time. Can I tell you a trick? And this is not a promise, but I've seen it so much that I can
Tell
say
me
it's
the trick.
so
Where do we
possible.
even begin?
Well, it's more of a value or a goal of why you would let go. And with timing, the faster you actually get into true surrender, the faster the timeline speeds up for you to get what you want. But it's just
So
backwards
how do
than
you
what we're
begin
taught.
to let go?
Again, it's a practice. You have to watch all the pieces in you that want to control, that have fear, that have emotions. When you block your emotions, it's a huge indicator that you're not in a place of surrender. It's a whole opening. You feel it in your whole system opens, your heart expands, you might cry. There are things that just feel different that we hold in, we ice out. So it's being with that part of you first. Again, we're on earth. If you just skip right up to the whole realms of those levels, then you're spiritually bypassing. Again, something I really have a problem with. Oh, I don't have to do all of this work or spend time in the discomfort. I'll just go right there. No, that's quicksand.
That spiritual bypassing, that's a really powerful
Yeah.
concept. And, I've been thinking about myself this week. So the day we're recording this, it's June 26th. And
Mhm.
I don't know what's going on in the ether or
I
the
do.
cosmos, but I've just been in a bad mood all
Yeah.
week and I have no reason, and I hate it. I'm not sleeping well. And, I'd love to blame it on the cosmos, but at the same time, I also have to, and you could tell me what's in the ether right now, what is happening, but I would love to blame it on the cosmos and just know this is a passing ship, but it's dysregulating and it's
Yeah.
frustrating.
That's the part of spiritual bypassing. We don't want to feel uncomfortable. We don't want to lose sleep. We don't want to be
Sucks.
angry. Totally. Being with that and being like, okay, these emotions are a visitor in my house. I am not anger. I am not gonna never sleep again. I am not, XY, grief or whatever it is. These are visitors. And so you trust, there's an ebb and a flow. That is the work of what's saying. It's like surrendering to that. This is a visitor coming through of a difficult moment in time. And look, the cosmos, whatever you want to call it, these are all inroads to you just feeling seen, feeling loved and held. I can't tell you how many times in a week that I work with clients who know nothing about each other, who have completely different lives, different geographical directions or places. They say the same, nearly word for word, the same thing that they're going through. And so by the end of the week, I tell my followers, hey, this is what's in the ethers because you all were saying it, so there must be something. And then my followers will go, oh my God, I was feeling that same thing. All that does, even if it's placebo, who cares? I don't care how we get there. Do you feel good? Do you feel seen? Do you feel okay to be in your frustration and to be held in that? Are you being vulnerable with it? Great. That's all you're at. And then it will pass. But yeah, there is all of us intuitives, mediums, all of that. We're like, oh, we see this coming. We knew this was going to happen. This is going to be a really hard time. But it's asking you to look at the places where your life isn't working. And how are you going to look at it if you don't feel it?
Is it the release of judgment part?
Correct.
Like judgment over this is a bad feeling. I'm in a bad mood. I don't like being in a bad mood. I don't know
Feelings
what
do
to do with
not have
these.
a moral value. You don't say grief is bad and joy is good. If you're open, it's not hot and cold faucet. It is just one faucet is open. I can't tell you how beautifully intertwined deep grief and the biggest amount of joy you've ever felt, those come hand in hand. If you are open to feeling the visitor of grief and being cracked open in that way, I promise you, you will feel the most joy that you've ever felt. There is right with it an expansion. But if you're not willing to feel the totality and the resonance and the evolution of your feelings, then you're not, of the tough feelings, you're not going to experience the high highs. That's not how feelings work. So I give everyone a feelings wheel, and we go and we look at it and we point what feelings are happening here. And then we go in. I can recommend a book for your listeners and for you if you really like the science of it, the psychology, the human
Yeah.
behavior. It's called No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz, and it's in internal family systems to identify all these parts so that you can feel safer to be with your feelings. It's really a good baseline and a jump start to doing the work that I do, so we can just be like, okay, this isn't your highest self. We're only interested in talking to your highest self who has love for all these parts of you that feel really big feelings.
I love that. I have a friend, Tennyson, if she's listening. Hi, Tenny.
Hi, Teddy.
She tells me all the time I need IFS.
Yeah, let's do it.
Christina, I'm wondering, what do you know that you wish other people could know?
I think this is in the ethers, is that people can't trust and love you if you're not really being you. The vulnerability to be in yourself and need help and have a confrontational opinion with people who are safe, that creates connection. And a lot of times we want to play small, people please to fit in, to get love, to keep love. But I can tell you, anytime that I've done that, it pushes people away because they don't know who I am. How can you trust me if you don't really know me? And so that's a big one, I think, right now.
That one almost had me welled up. That's crazy. Well, Christina, if somebody wants to learn from you, work with you, or be part of your tarot card pulls on Tuesdays, which are so fun, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, if you want to find me on social media, it's at Christina Trifero with 3 O's, Trifeeroo. And then my website where you can learn more about my modalities, workshops. I do psychic practice circles. I do work at retreats. That's spiritual-curiosity.
That's beautiful. Christina, thank you so much for sharing your heart and your story and the practical wisdom around what you do. I think will be such a huge support for people to maybe lower their shoulders and trust that they're going to be okay.
I love that. And I would love to encourage anyone who comes in through you to let me know. I'll give you a little gift.
Well, thank you, Christina.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.